She's representing herself, and this should be entertaining.
Your Honor, I'd like to call my first witness, Friss, Rose Ekong and her 9-year-old son, Emeka Jr.
The courtroom fell silent as Adanna Okafor stood up from the defendant's table, her worn briefcase clutched in trembling hands. Her husband, Chief Emeka Okafor, sat across the aisle with his expensive lawyer, a smug smile spreading across his face like oil on water. He leaned back in his custom-made suit, the kind that cost more than most people earned in 6 months, and let out a low chuckle that echoed through the Lagos High Court. "She's representing herself," he whispered loudly to his attorney, Mr. Gabadamosi, making sure everyone could hear. "This should be entertaining." The lawyer adjusted his glasses and smirked. Several people in the courtroom snickered. Adanna felt their eyes on her, their judgment pressing down like the humid Lagos heat outside. Her hands shook as she opened her briefcase, and for a moment, she wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. But then she remembered why she was here. She remembered the bruises, the lies, the empty bank accounts, the secret will that would have left her and her children with nothing while he ran off with his mistress to start a new life in America. And most importantly, she remembered the evidence hidden in her briefcase, evidence that would wipe that smug smile off his face forever. As the judge entered and everyone rose, Emeka caught her eye and mouthed the words, "You've already lost." His smile was the smile of a man who had never lost anything in his life, a man who believed he was untouchable. He had no idea that in the next 30 minutes, his entire world would come crashing down. He had no idea that the wife he had underestimated for 23 years had been quietly building a case that would destroy him. And he definitely had no idea about the witness waiting outside in the corridor, the one person he thought he had silenced forever. What would you do if the person who was supposed to love you tried to erase you from existence? Viewers, before we dive into this incredible story, please do me a favor and help to subscribe right now. Drop a like on this video, it actually helps more than you think. And comment below where you're watching from. Are you in Lagos, New York, London, Jamaica, Canada? I want to know. Now, to understand how Adanna ended up in this courtroom, facing down one of Nigeria's most powerful businessmen without a lawyer, we need to go back. Back to where it all started. Back to when she was just a young girl in the village of Enugu, with dreams bigger than the sky. Adanna grew up in a small compound where her mother sold groundnuts by the roadside and her father fixed bicycles. She was the first person in her family to finish secondary school, the first to go to university. She studied business administration at the University of Nigeria, working 3 jobs to pay her fees, sleeping only 4 hours a night, determined to make something of herself. That's where she met Emeka. He was in his final year, already working with his father's import-export business, already wearing expensive watches and driving a car that made other students stop and stare. He noticed Adanna in the library one evening, buried in her books, her determination practically glowing around her like a halo. "You study like the exam is tomorrow," he said, sitting down across from her. She looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "The exam is in 3 days, and I need a distinction if I want to keep my scholarship." He was intrigued. Here was a girl who didn't care about his money or his family name. She cared about her future, about building something real. Over the next 6 months, he pursued her relentlessly. He brought her food when she forgot to eat. He drove her home when the campus was unsafe at night. He listened to her dreams of opening her own business, of lifting her family out of poverty, of proving that a girl from nothing could become something. "Marry me," he said one evening under the jacaranda tree near the Faculty of Arts. "Marry me, and I'll help you build everything you've ever dreamed of. We'll be partners, equals." Together, she believed him. God help her, she believed every word. They married 2 weeks after her graduation in a ceremony that mixed her humble family's traditions with his family's extravagant display of wealth. His mother never approved. She made it clear from day one that Adanna was beneath them, that Emeka had married down, that a village girl could never truly belong in their world. But Emeka defended her, at least he did in the beginning. For the first 5 years, life was beautiful. Adanna gave birth to 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, Chukwudi, Obiora, and little Amara. She poured herself into being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, supporting Emeka's business, entertaining his clients, making their house a home. She set aside her own dreams, telling herself there would be time later, telling herself that this was what love looked like. This was sacrifice. Then slowly things began to change. Emeka started coming home later. He became irritable, critical. Nothing Adanna did was good enough anymore. The meals weren't seasoned right. The house wasn't clean enough. She had let herself go after the children. She was boring, ungrateful, useless. The first time he hit her, he apologized for 3 days straight. He bought her gifts, took her to expensive restaurants, swore it would never happen again. She believed him because she needed to believe him, because she had 3 children and no income of her own, because leaving seemed impossible. But it happened again, and again. And then one day she overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. If you're already hooked, smash that subscribe button right now. Hit the like button and share this with someone who loves powerful stories. Turn on notifications because you won't want to miss what Adanna discovered next. What do you think she overheard? Drop your guesses in the comments below. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day when Lagos traffic moved like molasses and the heat made everything feel slow and heavy. Adanna had come home early from the market because little Amara had a fever. She walked into their house in Ikoyi, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Lagos, carrying bags of medicine and fruits, when she heard Emeka's voice coming from his study. The door was slightly open. She wouldn't have stopped to listen, but she heard her own name. Adanna won't be a problem much longer, Emeka said into the phone, his voice cold and businesslike. My lawyer is drafting a new will. Everything goes to you and the baby. The house, the businesses, the offshore accounts. I've been moving money for months now. She'll get nothing. Adanna's blood turned to ice. Her hands gripped the plastic bags so tightly they cut into her palms. Yes, I know we have to wait a bit longer, Emeka continued, but trust me, once the paperwork is in place, I'll file for divorce. She signed a prenup years ago when she was too naive to read it properly. Her lawyer was my cousin, remember? He made sure every clause favored me. Even the children will stay with me. I have documentation of her instability, her depression, her inability to care for them properly. Adanna felt the world tilt. Documentation? What documentation? She had never been depressed. She had never neglected her children. What was he talking about? The medical reports from Dr. Okoli are perfect, Emeka laughed. Turns out money can buy anything, including a psychiatrist willing to diagnose someone he's never met. Combined with the witnesses I've paid, we'll have her declared an unfit mother within months. The woman on the other end said something Adanna couldn't hear, and Emeka laughed again. I know. 23 years is a long time to waste on someone so beneath me. My mother was right from the start. I should have married someone from our class. But hey, at least Adanna gave me 3 healthy children before she became completely useless. After the divorce, she can go back to that pathetic village she came from. Something broke inside Adanna in that moment. Not her spirit, but her fear. She had spent years being afraid of losing him, afraid of being alone, afraid of what people would say. But standing there in the hallway of the house she had turned into a home, listening to the man she had loved for over 2 decades plot her complete destruction, the fear transformed into something else entirely. Rage. Pure, cold, calculated rage. She quietly set down the bags and walked to their bedroom. Her hands were steady now. She knew exactly what she needed to do. While Emeka continued his phone conversation, probably with his mistress Ngozi, the woman she had suspected but never confirmed until now, Adanna went to work. She had never told Emeka, but she wasn't just a housewife. Years ago, before the children, she had completed her business degree. She understood contracts, finances, legal documents. She had spent the last 15 years managing their household accounts, watching, learning, noticing things. She knew where he kept important papers. She knew his passwords because he was arrogant enough to use the same one for everything, his birth date. Over the next 3 months, Adanna became a ghost in her own home. She smiled when Emeka wanted her to smile. She cooked his favorite meals. She played the role of the obedient, broken wife, while secretly she was building her case. Every time Emeka left for work, she would photograph documents from his study. bank statements showing money being funneled to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, emails between him and Ngozi planning their new life in Houston, Texas, where he had already purchased a house under a shell company, text messages to Dr. Okoli arranging payment for the fake psychiatric evaluation, receipts for the apartment where he kept Ngozi, an apartment he was paying for with money that should have been family income. But Adanna needed more than just proof of adultery and financial fraud. She needed something that would destroy him completely, something that would ensure he could never take her children, never leave her destitute. That's when she remembered Rose. Rose had been their housemaid 10 years ago, a young girl from Cross River State who came to work for them when she was barely 19. She was beautiful, hardworking, and kind. Adanna had liked her immediately, treated her like family. Then one day Rose disappeared, just vanished without collecting her last month's salary or taking her belongings. Emeka said she had run away, probably gone back to her village. At the time, Adanna believed him, though it never quite made sense. But now, with everything she was discovering about her husband's true nature, Adanna wondered. She began asking questions quietly, carefully. She contacted Rose's family in Cross River, pretending she was trying to send the girl her back pay. What Rose's mother told her made Adanna's blood boil. Rose hadn't run away. She had been pregnant, with Emeka's child. Emeka had paid her to disappear, to never speak about what happened. But when Rose refused to have an abortion, when she said she would tell Adanna everything, Emeka had threatened her. He had men who could make people disappear permanently, he told her. Rose had fled in terror, given birth to the baby in her village, and had been too afraid to ever come forward, until now. Adanna found Rose working in a small restaurant in Calabar, struggling to raise a 9-year-old boy who looked exactly like Emeka. It took 3 visits and a lot of tears, but finally Rose agreed to help. She was tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. She wanted her son to know his father, to have the life he deserved. More importantly, Rose had kept everything. The text messages from 10 years ago, before she had to throw away her phone. The bank transfer receipts where Emeka paid her off. The medical records from the hospital where she gave birth, listing the father's name as Emeka Okafor. Even a DNA test she had secretly arranged through a clinic using hair samples she had kept from Emeka's brush all those years ago. Armed with Rose's evidence and everything she had collected herself, Adanna went to see a lawyer. But not just any lawyer. She went to see Barrister Kioma Ease, a woman known for taking on powerful men and winning. The consultation cost money Adanna didn't have, but she sold some of her jewelry, the pieces Emeka had given her back when he still pretended to love her. Barrister Ease listened to everything and looked at all the evidence. When Adanna finished, the lawyer sat back in her chair and smiled. "Mrs. Okafor," she said, "we can destroy him. Fraud, tax evasion, child abandonment, coercion, threat of violence. He'll lose everything. The business, the houses, his reputation. He might even face jail time." Adanna felt hope for the first time in months. "When do we start?" "We start immediately. But I have to be honest with you. My retainer fee is 5 million naira. That's just to begin. The full case could cost 15 million. Adanna's hope crumbled. She didn't have 15 million naira. She didn't have 5 million. She had maybe 300,000 in her secret account. Money she had been saving from household allowances for years. "I understand," she said quietly, gathering her papers. "Thank you for your time." She walked out of that office feeling defeated. How could she fight a man with unlimited resources when she had nothing? Maybe Emeka was right. Maybe she had already lost. But then, walking through the Lagos streets, watching women selling goods by the roadside, mothers just like her fighting every day to survive, something clicked. She thought about everything she had learned in university all those years ago. She thought about the constitutional law class where the professor said every Nigerian citizen had the right to self-representation in court. She didn't need 15 million naira. She just needed courage. Adanna went home and spent every night for the next month studying. She read law books from the public library. She watched court proceedings online. She studied every case similar to hers she could find. She prepared her arguments, organized her evidence, and rehearsed her statements until she could recite them in her sleep. When the divorce papers arrived, exactly as Amika had planned, Adanna didn't cry. She filed her countersuit representing herself. She sued for custody of the children, for her share of the marital assets, and for damages related to fraud and emotional abuse. Amika's lawyer called it a joke. Amika himself laughed when he heard. His wife, the village girl who barely graduated university, thought she could face him in court without representation. It was the most entertaining thing that had happened to him in years, which brought them to today, to this courtroom, to Amika's smug smile and his lawyer's condescending chuckles, to the moment when everyone believed Adanna had already lost. The judge, Justice Adalek, looked at Adanna with something that might have been pity. Mrs. Okafor, are you certain you want to proceed without legal representation? This is a complex case involving substantial assets and serious allegations. I can adjourn to give you time to secure counsel. Adanna stood tall, her voice steady. Your Honor, I am certain. I am ready to present my case. Very well, the judge sighed. We'll proceed. Mrs. Okafor, your opening statement. Adanna walked to the center of the courtroom. Every eye was on her. Emeka leaned back in his chair, that insufferable smile still on his face, already imagining his victory. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a single folder. Then she looked directly at her husband and said the words that would change everything. Your Honor, I'd like to call my first witness, Rose Ekong, and her 9-year-old son, Emeka Jr. The smile vanished from Amika's face like smoke in the wind. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when everyone doubted you? Have you ever fought back against someone more powerful? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and family who love real-life drama. We're just getting started. The courtroom erupted. Emeka shot to his feet, his face turning a deep shade of purple. What is this? What kind of trick? Mr. Okafor, sit down. Justice Adalek's gavel cracked like thunder. You will have your turn to speak. Mrs. Okafor, call your witness. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened and Rose walked in, her hand firmly holding that of a young boy who looked like a smaller, gentler version of Emeka. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same broad forehead, the same deep-set eyes, the same shape of the nose. People in the courtroom gasped and whispered. Emeka's lawyer, Mr. Gabatamosi, leaned over frantically, whispering to his client. But Emeka just stared, frozen. Rose walked to the witness stand with her head held high. Gone was the terrified girl who had fled 10 years ago. In her place was a woman who had survived, who had raised a child alone, who had finally found her courage. After she was sworn in, Adanna began her questioning. Her voice was calm, professional, nothing like the trembling housewife everyone expected. Ms. Ekong, can you please tell the court how you know my husband? Rose took a deep breath. I worked as a housemaid in the Okafor home from 2014 to 2015. Mr. Emeka Okafor was my employer. And what was the nature of your relationship with Mr. Okafor? Objection. Mr. Gabatamosi jumped up. Relevance, Your Honor. This case is about divorce and asset distribution, not ancient history about household staff. Adanna turned to the judge. Your Honor, this directly relates to Mr. Okafor's character and his pattern of deception, which is central to my claims of fraud and my petition for full custody. Justice Adalek nodded. Overruled. The witness may answer. Rose's voice was steady. Mr. Okafor began making advances toward me 3 months after I started working there. At first it was compliments, then gifts. I was 19 years old. He was my employer. I didn't know how to say no. When Mrs. Okafor was away visiting her family in Enugu, he would come to my quarters at night. Adanna felt sick hearing it out loud, but she kept her face neutral. What happened when you became pregnant? I told Mr. Okafor I was carrying his child. He gave me 1 million naira and told me to have an abortion and never speak of it again. But I couldn't do it. I'm Catholic. Abortion is a sin. So I told him I was keeping the baby. And how did he respond? Rose's voice cracked slightly. He said if I didn't disappear, he would make sure I disappeared permanently. He said he knew people who could make problems go away. He showed me photographs of my family's house in Cross River, my younger siblings going to school. He said accidents happen to people who don't listen. The courtroom was silent. Even the people who had been smirking earlier looked uncomfortable. So you ran? Yes. I took the money, went back to my village, and never came back to Lagos until now. I had my son, Emmanuel, but I call him Junior because she looked at the boy sitting in the front row with a court guardian, because he deserves to know who his father is. Adanna presented the evidence. Bank transfer receipts from Amika's account to Rose's account, dated exactly when Rose said they were. Text messages Amika had sent from a secondary phone number, messages that were threatening and explicit. Medical records from the hospital in Calabar showing the birth of Emmanuel Okafor, with the father listed as Emeka Okafor. And finally, the DNA test results. Your Honor, Adanna said, handing copies to the judge and to Mr. Gabatamosi. These DNA results, certified by Pathcare Laboratory, show a 99.9% probability that my husband is the biological father of Emmanuel Ekong. Mr. Gabatamosi was frantically flipping through papers. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. Emeka sat with his head in his hands. His mother, who had come to watch her son's expected victory, let out a wail and began praying loudly in Igbo until a court officer asked her to be quiet. But Adanna wasn't finished, not even close. Your Honor, if I may continue with my case, this pattern of deception, intimidation, and abuse is not isolated. I have evidence that my husband has been systematically defrauding not only his family, but his business partners in the Nigerian government. She presented document after document, evidence of tax evasion through shell companies, proof that Amika had been inflating his business expenses and hiding income in offshore accounts, avoiding millions in taxes, contracts showing he had been embezzling money from his own company, money that belonged partly to his business partners and investors. Your Honor, my husband has been moving our family's money, approximately 47 million naira, to accounts in the Cayman Islands and the United States. He purchased property in Houston, Texas, under a fake company name, intending to relocate there with his mistress, Ms. Ngozi Anozi, abandoning his family and his legal obligations in Nigeria. She presented emails between Emeka and Ngozi, printouts of their plans to start a new life in America. Photographs of the house in Houston, transfer receipts showing money being wired out of the country illegally without the proper declarations to the Central Bank of Nigeria. Mr. Badamosi tried to object, tried to claim the evidence was obtained illegally, but Adanna was ready. Your Honor, I obtained these documents from my own home, from accounts I had legal access to as the wife managing household finances, and from business computers I was authorized to use. Everything was legally obtained within the course of my marriage. Justice Adalek was no longer looking bored or pitying. He was reading through the documents with growing seriousness, his expression darkening with each page. Mrs. Okafor, these are serious allegations. Tax evasion, capital flight, fraud. You understand that this goes beyond a civil divorce case? Yes, Your Honor. I've already filed reports with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. I'm told investigations are already underway. Emeka's face went from purple to gray. He looked like he might vomit. The EFCC didn't play games. If they were investigating him, his assets would be frozen. His passport would be seized. He could face years in prison. Your Honor, Adanna continued, I also have evidence that my husband has been bribing Dr. Chidi Okoli, a psychiatrist, to create false medical records claiming I am mentally unstable and an unfit mother. The goal was to take full custody of our children and leave me with nothing. She presented bank transfers to Dr. Okoli, text messages arranging the payments, and even a recording she had made when she confronted the doctor herself. In the recording, Dr. Okoli admitted everything, begging her not to report him to the medical board. Furthermore, Adanna said, pulling out another folder, I have witness statements from household staff, neighbors, and even some of my husband's own business associates documenting years of emotional abuse, physical violence, and threats. I have hospital records from the 2 times I needed treatment for injuries, though I lied then and said I fell downstairs. I'm not lying anymore. She showed photographs, pictures she had secretly taken of bruises over the years, images she had sent to her own email account and stored in a cloud service Emeka didn't know about. pictures of broken furniture from his rages, a cracked mirror from when he threw a glass at her head. Your Honor, I am here to ask for full custody of my 3 children, Chukwudi, Obiora, and Amara. I am asking for my rightful share of marital assets, which I calculate to be 50% of all legitimate holdings. I am asking that my husband be held accountable for his fraud, his abuse, and his crimes. And I am asking that Rose Ekong and her son receive child support in recognition. She turned to face Emeka directly. He couldn't meet her eyes. For 23 years, I was silent. I was afraid. I let myself believe I was worthless, that I deserved the way you treated me, but I'm not that woman anymore. And you're not as powerful as you think you are. Justice Adelek called for a brief recess. As people filed out of the courtroom, Adanna stood alone at her table, her legs shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She had done it. She had presented everything. But she knew the fight wasn't over. During the recess, something unexpected happened. Mr. Gabatamosi approached Adanna outside the courtroom, without Emeka. Mrs. Okafor, he said quietly, my client wishes to discuss a settlement. Adanna almost laughed. Now he wants to settle? After months of him telling everyone I was crazy? After he tried to take my children? My client is willing to offer a very generous settlement. Full custody to you, 60% of marital assets, acknowledgement of a manual, and a formal apology. In exchange for? In exchange for you not pursuing the criminal charges, for keeping the EFCC evidence sealed, for allowing him to save some face. Adanna looked at the lawyer for a long moment. She thought about her children, about the years of court battles ahead if she didn't settle. She thought about Emeka potentially going to prison and what that would mean for her kids who, despite everything, still loved their father. Then she thought about Rose, about all the other women Emeka had probably heard over the years. She thought about the business partners he had defrauded, the taxes he had stolen from a country that desperately needed every naira for schools and hospitals. No, she said simply. Tell your client I'll see him back in court. Mr. Gabatamosi's face fell. Mrs. Okafor, please reconsider. My client could make things very difficult for you. He still has powerful friends. Adanna smiled, and there was steel in it. Your client is finished, and we both know it. The only question now is whether he faces justice quietly or fights it and makes everything worse. That's his choice to make. She walked away, leaving the lawyer standing in the hallway. When court resumed, Justice Adelek had news. I've reviewed all the evidence presented this morning. This is indeed a complex case with serious criminal implications. Mr. Okafor, do you have any defense to present? Mr. Gabatamosi stood up. Your Honor, my client wishes to invoke his right not to testify, given the potential criminal liability. That is his right, the judge acknowledged. However, in the civil matters before this court, regarding custody and asset distribution, his silence will be noted. Mrs. Okafor, do you have any additional witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call my eldest son, Chukwudi Okafor, age 15. This caused another stir. Emeka looked up sharply as his son walked to the witness stand. Chukwudi was tall for his age, quiet, serious. He looked like Emeka but had Adanna's gentle eyes. After being sworn in, Adanna asked him gently, Chukwudi, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell the judge the truth. Have you ever witnessed your father being violent toward me? The boy's voice was quiet but clear. Yes, Mom. Can you tell the court what you saw? Chukwudi took a deep breath. I've seen him hit her many times. I've heard him call her terrible names. Once, when I was 12, I tried to stop him. He pushed me down and told me to mind my business, that he was teaching her respect. Tears started rolling down the boy's face. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry I didn't do more to protect you. Adanna's own eyes filled with tears, but she kept her voice steady. You were a child, Chukwudi. You have nothing to apologize for. Do you feel safe with your father? No, Ma. Do your brother and sister feel safe with him? No, Ma. We want to stay with you. All 3 of us. We already talked about it. It was the final blow. Justice Adelek had heard enough. He looked at Emeka with undisguised disgust. This court will adjourn until tomorrow morning, at which time I will deliver my ruling on the civil matters. Mr. Okafor, I am also formally referring this case to the appropriate criminal authorities. You are ordered to surrender your passport to this court immediately. Bailiff, collect Mr. Okafor's passport now. Emeka sat frozen as the bailiff approached. His perfect world, built on lies and cruelty and other people's suffering, was crumbling around him. And standing across the courtroom, no longer afraid, no longer small, was the woman he had spent 2 decades trying to destroy. The woman who had just destroyed him instead. Are you loving this story? Then do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, my mom said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers, and I really want to prove her wrong. Smash that like button, share this video with everyone you know who loves powerful stories of justice, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss the conclusion. Comment below what you think the judge's ruling will be. Will Adanna get everything she deserves? Let me know your thoughts. The next morning, Adanna woke up at 5 a.m. in her sister Nkechi's small apartment in Surulere. She had moved out of the Ikoyi house 3 days after filing her countersuit, taking the children with her. It was cramped, 5 people sharing 2 bedrooms, but it was the first time in years that Adanna had slept peacefully through the night. Her children were already awake, gathered around the small dining table. Chukwudi was making breakfast, scrambled eggs and bread. Obiora, who was 13, was helping Amara, who was 10, get ready for school. They had all insisted on coming to court today to hear the judge's decision. "Mama, are you nervous?" Amara asked, her small hand slipping into Adanna's. "A little bit, my love," Adanna admitted, "but mostly I'm proud. Proud of all of us for being brave." "Daddy called me last night," Chukwudi said quietly, not meeting his mother's eyes. "He said you turned us against him. He said you're lying about everything." Adanna's heart clenched. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I was there. I saw what he did to you. I told him that lying about it now just makes it worse." Chukwudi finally looked up at his mother. "Was that okay?" Adanna pulled her son into a hug. "That was more than okay. That took courage." They arrived at the Lagos High Court by 8 a.m., even though the hearing wasn't until 9. A small crowd had gathered outside. Word had spread about the case, the village wife taking on the powerful businessman. Some people were supporters, holding signs that said "Justice for Adanna" and "Believe Women." Others were gossips, just there for the drama. Inside the courtroom, Emeka was already seated with Mr. Gabatamosi. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. His mother sat behind him, glaring daggers at Adanna. Next to her was Emeka's younger brother Chidi, who actually gave Adanna a small nod of respect, which surprised her. Rose was there too with young Emmanuel. The boy was playing quietly with a small toy car, unaware that today would determine his future relationship with his father. At exactly 9 a.m., Justice Adelek entered. Everyone rose. "Please be seated," the judge said, arranging papers on his desk. "I have spent considerable time reviewing this case, and I must say, in 27 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a comprehensive presentation of evidence, particularly from a self-represented litigant. Mrs. Okafor, you have done exceptional work." Adanna felt warmth spread through her chest. Across the aisle, Emeka's jaw tightened. "However," Justice Adelek continued, "this court must base its decisions on law and evidence, not emotion. So let us proceed systematically." He adjusted his glasses and began reading from his notes. "On the matter of child custody, the evidence presented shows a clear pattern of domestic violence, emotional abuse, and unstable behavior from Mr. Emeka Okafor. The testimony from the eldest child, Chukwudi, was particularly compelling and disturbing. The court also notes Mr. Okafor's attempt to fraudulently obtain custody through falsified psychiatric reports, which demonstrates both his willingness to deceive this court and his unsuitability as a primary caregiver." Emeka shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Therefore, full physical and legal custody of the 3 minor children, Chukwudi, Obiora, and Amara Okafor, is hereby granted to Mrs. Adanna Okafor. Mr. Emeka Okafor will be granted supervised visitation rights only, pending completion of a court-mandated anger management program and psychological evaluation by an independent professional." Adanna exhaled. Her children were safe. Behind her, she heard Amara let out a small sound of relief. "On the matter of marital assets," Justice Adelek continued, The court recognizes that Mrs. Okafor contributed significantly to the accumulation of wealth during this marriage, both through domestic labor and through management of household finances and some business operations. However, the court also finds that Mr. Okafor has been engaged in systematic fraud, hiding assets, and illegally transferring marital funds out of the country. The judge looked directly at Emeka. Mr. Okafor, your behavior has been not just morally reprehensible, but criminally fraudulent. You attempted to leave your wife destitute while secretly accumulating wealth through illegal means. Your Honor, Mr. Badamosi stood up. My client wishes to... Sit down, counselor. I'm not finished. Justice Adalek's voice was sharp. Given the fraudulent nature of Mr. Okafor's financial dealings and his attempt to hide marital assets, this court awards Mrs. Adanna Okafor 70% of all legitimate marital assets. This includes the family home in Ikoyi, 2 of the 3 vehicles, and 70% of all verified bank accounts and investments. Emeka's mother let out a cry of protest. Emeka himself looked like he might faint. Furthermore, the judge continued, all assets found to be proceeds of fraud, tax evasion, or illegal capital flight will be seized by the appropriate authorities. Mr. Okafor, your cooperation with the EFCC and first investigations will be noted when those cases proceed to criminal court. Your Honor, this is excessive, Mr. Gabadamosi protested. 70% is exactly what Mrs. Okafor deserves, counselor, considering your client attempted to leave her with 0%. Be grateful I didn't award her more. Justice Adalek's tone left no room for argument. Mr. Okafor will also pay all court costs and legal fees, including compensation to Mrs. Okafor for her time and effort in preparing this case, which I calculate at 2 million naira. Adanna couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was more than she had hoped for, more than she had dreamed possible. Now, regarding Ms. Rose Ekong and the child Emmanuel, Justice Adalek said, his expression softening slightly as he looked at Rose. Mr. Okafor, you have a 9-year-old son that you have neglected, threatened, and denied. This is unconscionable. Your Honor, the paternity has not been... Mr. Badamosi tried again. The DNA evidence is conclusive, counselor. Emmanuel Ekong is Mr. Okafor's biological child. The judge's voice was firm. Mr. Okafor is hereby ordered to pay child support in the amount of 300,000 naira per month, retroactive to the child's birth. That's approximately 32 million naira in back support to be paid within 6 months. Emeka actually stood up this time. Your Honor, that's impossible. I don't have that kind of... You have a house in Houston, Texas, worth approximately 200 million naira, Mr. Okafor. I suggest you sell it. Justice Adalek's eyes were cold. Additionally, Emmanuel Ekong is to be legally recognized as your son, with all the rights and privileges that entails, including inheritance rights. He is to have his surname changed to Okafor if his mother chooses, and you will treat him with the same consideration as your other children. Rose was crying softly, her hands covering her mouth. After 10 years of fear and hiding, her son was finally being recognized. Furthermore, Mr. Okafor, you are ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation and anger management treatment. You are prohibited from coming within 100 meters of Mrs. Adanna Okafor, except during scheduled, supervised visitations with your children. If you violate this order, you will be held in contempt of court and face immediate arrest. Justice Adalek set down his papers and looked around the courtroom. Domestic violence is a plague on our society. Men who abuse their power, their wealth, and their physical strength to terrorize women and children are cowards. This court will not tolerate such behavior. He turned to Adanna. Mrs. Okafor, you showed remarkable courage in bringing this case forward and representing yourself. You have not only secured justice for yourself and your children, but you have also given a voice to the countless women who suffer in silence. I hope your example inspires others to speak up and fight back. Adanna felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. 23 years of pain, of fear, of feeling worthless, and it had all led to this moment. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the courtroom erupted. People were applauding, crying, shouting. Adanna's children rushed forward and surrounded her. all of them crying and hugging. Ningxi pushed through the crowd, screaming with joy. Even strangers were congratulating Adanna, patting her on the back, telling her she was an inspiration. Rose made her way over with Emmanuel. The two women embraced, both of them crying. "Thank you," Rose whispered. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for giving my son a chance." "We're family now," Adanna said, looking down at Emmanuel. "All of us. Your son is my children's brother. We'll figure it out together." Across the courtroom, Emeka sat alone. His lawyer was packing up papers, avoiding eye contact. His mother had stormed out, probably to call every family member and complain about the injustice of it all. His brother Chidi approached him, said something quiet, and walked away shaking his head. Emeka had lost everything: his reputation, his wealth, his children, his freedom. The man who had laughed at his wife in this very courtroom yesterday now sat with his head in his hands, completely defeated. As Adanna gathered her papers and prepared to leave, Emeka suddenly stood up and walked toward her. Two court officers immediately moved to intercept him, but Adanna held up her hand. "It's okay," she said. "Let him speak." Emeka stood a few feet away, close enough to talk but respecting the distance the judge had ordered. He looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. The words sounded strange coming from him, unfamiliar. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. But I need you to know I'm sorry for all of it." Adanna studied her husband, this man she had loved for so long, this man who had hurt her so deeply. She felt something unexpected. Not hatred, not even anger anymore. Just sadness for the life they could have had if he had been a better man. "I don't forgive you, Emeka," she said calmly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I hope someday you actually become the man you pretended to be when we met. For your children's sake, if not for your own." She turned and walked away, surrounded by her children, her sister, and her new extended family. She didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, a reporter from Channels Television approached with a camera crew. "Mrs. Okafor, can we ask you a few questions about the case?" Adanna hesitated, then nodded. "Why not? Let her story be told. Let other women see that they could fight back and win." "Mrs. Okafor, how does it feel to have won such a decisive victory?" "It feels like I can finally breathe," Adanna said honestly. "For years I felt like I was drowning, but today I'm alive again." "What would you say to other women in similar situations?" Adanna looked directly into the camera. "I would say you are stronger than you think. I would say your abuser wants you to believe you're powerless, but you're not. I would say it's going to be hard, maybe the hardest thing you ever do. But on the other side of that fear is freedom. And I would say you don't have to do it alone. Find people who believe in you. Find your courage and fight." The reporter smiled. "Thank you, Mrs. Okafor. You're an inspiration." As they walked away from the courthouse, Amara tugged on Adanna's hand. "Mama, what are we going to do now?" Adanna thought about the question. She had a house now, resources, freedom. But more than that, she had herself back. The dreams she had set aside 23 years ago suddenly didn't seem so impossible anymore. "Well," she said, smiling down at her daughter, "I was thinking about starting that business I always wanted. Maybe a small consulting firm, helping other women entrepreneurs get started. What do you think?" "I think that sounds perfect," Chukwudi said, putting his arm around his mother's shoulders. They walked toward the parking lot where Nkechi's old car was waiting. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Adanna wasn't afraid of it. She had faced the worst and survived. She had fought the most powerful person in her life and won. Whatever came next, she would handle it. Not as Amika's wife, not as someone's victim, but as Adanna Okafor, a woman who had found her voice and refused to be silenced ever again. Behind them, the courthouse stood tall against the Lagos sky, a place where justice had actually been served, where a woman with nothing but courage and truth had defeated a man with everything but honor. And somewhere in that courthouse, tucked away in official records that would last forever, was the evidence of what happened when you underestimate the woman you tried to destroy. What would you do if someone tried to take everything from you? Would you have the courage to fight back like Adanna? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, Please share it with your friends, your family, with anyone who needs to hear that they can overcome anything. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed because we have more powerful stories coming your way. 6 months later, Adanna stood in front of a small office building in Victoria Island. The sign above the door read, Rising Phoenix Consulting, Empowering Women Entrepreneurs. It wasn't fancy, just 2 rooms on the second floor, but it was hers. Built with her own money, her own vision, her own sweat and determination. Inside, Rose was at the reception desk, answering phones and scheduling appointments. After the court case, Adanna had offered Rose a job, and the 2 women had become close friends, bonded by their shared history and their determination to build better futures. Mrs. Okafor, your 3 o'clock appointment is here, Rose called out. It's another domestic violence case. She wants to know if you can help her prepare for court. Adanna smiled. Word had spread quickly after her case made the news. Women from all over Lagos, all over Nigeria, had started reaching out. Some wanted business advice, but many wanted something else. Something Adanna hadn't initially planned to offer but felt called to provide. Hope that they could represent themselves in court, that they could fight back against powerful men and win. Send her in, Adanna said. The woman who entered was young, maybe 25, with a black eye poorly covered with makeup and fear written all over her face. She reminded Adanna of herself just a year ago. Mrs. Okafor, I saw you on television, the woman said nervously. My name is Blessing. My husband, he hurts me, and he's threatening to take my baby if I leave. He says I have no money for lawyers, no way to fight him. But I saw what you did, and I thought maybe... Her voice trailed off. Adanna gestured for her to sit down. Blessing, tell me everything, and then we're going to make a plan. Over the next 2 hours, Adanna listened, took notes, and began outlining a strategy. She had become an expert at this, helping women document abuse, gather evidence, and prepare their cases. She wasn't a lawyer, couldn't give legal advice, but she could share what she had learned, could help them find their voices. You can do this, Adanna told Blessing as their meeting ended. It won't be easy, but nothing worth having ever is, and you're not alone anymore. After Blessing left, Rose brought Adanna a cup of tea. That's the 15th woman this month, Rose said. You're changing lives, Ada. We're changing lives, Adanna corrected. I couldn't do any of this without you. Emmanuel ran into the office, back from school in his uniform. At nearly 10 years old, he was thriving. Emeka had started supervised visits with him, awkward at first but slowly improving. The boy now had a relationship with his half-siblings, and Chukwudi had taken to being a big brother with surprising enthusiasm. Mama Rose, Mama Adanna, Emmanuel called out excitedly. He had started calling Adanna Mama too, which made her heart swell every time. Guess what? I got an A on my mathematics test. That's wonderful, Adanna hugged him. Your father will be proud. You're seeing him this Saturday, right? Emmanuel's face became more serious. Yes, he's different now, quieter. He actually listens when I talk. Dr. Obi says he's making progress. Dr. Obi was the psychologist Emeka had been court-ordered to see. According to the reports submitted to the court, Emeka was actually engaging with the therapy, confronting his behavior, trying to change. Adanna didn't know if people like him could truly change, but she hoped so, for her children's sake. Her phone rang. It was Chukwudi. Mama, just reminding you about the school concert tonight. Amara is singing, remember? I remember, my dear. I'll be there at 6. Is your father coming? There was a pause. He asked if he could. I told him he needs to sit far away from you because of the court order, but that we'd like him there. Is that okay? Adanna felt a complex mix of emotions. Yes, that's okay. He's still your father. You're allowed to want him there. That evening, the entire family gathered at Corona School for Amara's concert. Adanna sat with Chukwudi and Obiora, with Rose and Emmanuel a few rows behind them. On the opposite side of the auditorium, she could see Emeka sitting alone, keeping the required distance. When Amara walked onto the stage in her white dress, looking so small and brave, Adanna's heart swelled with pride. Her daughter began to sing a Yoruba folk song about a bird that learned to fly despite a broken wing. The metaphor wasn't lost on anyone who knew their story. Adanna glanced across the auditorium and saw Emeka crying silently. Good, she thought. Let him feel something. Let him understand what he almost destroyed. After the concert, the children wanted to see both parents, so they stood in the parking lot, maintaining the court-ordered distance while Chukwudi, Obiora, and Amara moved between them. Mama, Daddy wants to know if he can talk to you for just a minute, Obiora said, playing messenger. Adanna considered it, then nodded. 1 minute, and the children stay right here where I can see them. Emeka approached but stopped several feet away, respecting the boundary. He looked different than he had 6 months ago. Thinner, older, humbler. The EFCC case was still ongoing, but he had cooperated fully, paid back millions in taxes, and was likely to avoid jail time in exchange for his cooperation. He had lost most of his wealth, his reputation was destroyed, but he was slowly rebuilding a relationship with his children. Thank you for letting me come tonight, he said quietly. Amara was beautiful. They're all doing so well. You're doing an amazing job with them. I know, Adanna said simply. Emeka actually smiled, a sad smile but genuine. That's new. The old you would have said, thank you, but they're your children too. You found yourself. I always had myself, Emeka. You just tried to bury her, but I clawed my way back. I'm glad you did. He looked at her with something that might have been regret or might have been respect. I've been in therapy, really working on myself. Dr. Obi, he's helping me understand why I became the man I was. My father, how he treated my mother, how I learned that power and control were love. It doesn't excuse what I did to you, but I'm beginning to understand it. That's good, Emeka, truly. But you're not doing it for me. You're doing it for yourself and for those children. I know. He paused. I heard about your business, Rising Phoenix. It's a good name. I always knew you were smart, capable. I was just too threatened by it to let you shine. Adanna looked at this man she had once loved, this man who had hurt her so deeply. She didn't love him anymore. She didn't hate him either. He was just someone she used to know, someone she had survived. Emeka, I hope you become a better man. Not for me, not even for the children, but for yourself. Because living the way you lived, hurting people the way you hurt them, that's not really living. That's just existing in darkness. I'm trying to find the light, he said. It's hard, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. They stood in silence for a moment. Two people who had shared 23 years of their lives, but were now strangers bound together only by the children they had created. Can I ask you something? Emeka said. That day in court, when I laughed at you, when I thought you were defeated before you even started, did you know? Did you know you were going to win? Adanna thought about the question. No, I didn't know I was going to win. I was terrified. Every night before the trial, I couldn't sleep, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. But I knew something more important than whether I would win. What was that? I knew I would survive. Win or lose, I was going to survive. And that was enough to make me brave. Emeka nodded slowly. You're stronger than I ever was. Maybe that's why I tried so hard to break you. Because I knew deep down that you were always the stronger one. Goodbye, Emeka. Goodbye, Adanna. She walked back to her children, gathered them close, and headed toward her car. The one she owned, paid for with money she had earned through her own work and the settlement the court had awarded her. As they drove through the Lagos streets, streets that used to fill her with dread, but now felt like home again, Amara spoke up from the back seat. Mama, when I grow up, I want to be like you. What do you mean, my love? I want to be strong. I want to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. I want to be brave like you. Adanna looked in the rearview mirror at her 3 children. These beautiful souls she had protected, these young people who were learning what real strength looked like. You already are, my darling. All 3 of you. You already are. 3 months later, Adanna received an invitation to speak at the University of Lagos Law faculty. They wanted her to talk to students about self-representation in court and women's rights. She almost declined, feeling like an imposter. She wasn't a lawyer, just a woman who had fought for herself. But then she thought about all the women who had reached out to her, all the lives that had been changed because she had been willing to share her story. She accepted the invitation. Standing in front of 200 law students, Adanna felt nervous but determined. She told her story honestly, holding nothing back. She talked about the abuse, the fear, The moment she decided to fight back, she talked about representing herself, about the mistakes she made, the lessons she learned. The legal system can be intimidating, she told the students. It's designed to be complex, to require experts, and lawyers serve an important purpose. But sometimes the most important thing in a courtroom isn't legal expertise. It's truth. It's courage. It's the willingness to stand up and say, "No more." After her speech, students surrounded her with questions, but one young woman waited until everyone else had left. "Mrs. Okafor," she said quietly, "my mother is in a situation like you were, but she's afraid to leave. She says she can't do it, that she's not strong enough, not smart enough. Can I show her your story?" Adanna took the young woman's hands. "Show her my story. Tell her about me. But also tell her this. She doesn't need to be me. She doesn't need to represent herself in court or become some kind of warrior woman. She just needs to take one small step toward freedom, then another, then another. That's how it starts, one step at a time." The young woman was crying now. "Thank you. You've given me hope for her." "Hope is powerful," Adanna said. "Don't underestimate it." As Adanna left the university that evening, her phone buzzed with a message from barrister Kioma Ease, the lawyer she couldn't afford to hire during her case. The message read, "Saw your speech on social media. Brilliant. Want to partner on a program to train women in legal self-advocacy? I'll provide the legal expertise. You provide the inspiration. Let's talk." Adanna smiled. The universe had a way of bringing the right people together at the right time. 1 year after her day in court, Adanna stood on the balcony of her new apartment in Lekki, looking out over the Lagos Lagoon. It wasn't as fancy as the Ikoyi house she had shared with Emeka, but it was hers. Every piece of furniture, every decoration, every decision had been made by her, for her and her children. Rose and Emmanuel had moved into the flat below hers in the same building. They were family now, truly family. The children moved freely between both apartments, and Adanna had never felt more supported or less alone. Her business was growing. She had hired 3 more staff members, all women she had helped through their own legal battles, women who now wanted to pay it forward. They had helped over 100 women in the past year, some with business consulting, others with preparing for court cases, all with restoring their sense of self-worth. The program with Barrister Easy had launched, offering free legal workshops for women across Lagos. They were planning to expand to other states. Adanna had even been invited to speak at conferences, to share her story with audiences across Nigeria and beyond. But the best measure of her success wasn't the business or the speaking engagements or the media attention. It was moments like this one, standing on her balcony, feeling peace in her soul, knowing that she had saved herself and in doing so had helped save others. Her phone rang. It was Nkechi. "Ada, turn on NTA right now. You're on the news again." Adanna switched on the television to see a news report about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. They were using her case as an example, calling her a champion for women's rights, an inspiration to victims everywhere. "Look at you, sister," Nkechi said with pride in her voice. "Remember when we were young girls in Enugu, dreaming about our futures? You've exceeded every dream we ever had. We've both come far," Adanna said, "and we're not done yet." That night, tucking Amara into bed, her daughter asked the question she had asked many times over the past year. "Mama, are you happy now?" Adanna thought about it, really thought about it. She thought about the pain of her past, the challenges of her present, the uncertainty of her future. She thought about her scars, both visible and invisible. She thought about all she had lost and all she had gained. "Yes, my love," she finally answered. "I am happy, not because everything is perfect, but because I'm free, and freedom, real freedom, is the greatest happiness there is." "Will you ever get married again?" Amara asked. Adanna laughed. "Maybe someday, but this time I'll marry someone who sees me as an equal, who respects my strength instead of fearing it. Or maybe I won't marry at all. Either way, I'll be fine, because I've learned the most important lesson. I don't need someone else to complete me. I'm already whole." 2 years after that day in court when Amika laughed at her, Adanna received an unexpected letter. It was from Amika, but not to her. It was to be opened only if something happened to him. He had put it in his new will and asked his lawyer to provide her with a copy. The letter read, "Adanna, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I wanted to leave these words I should have said more clearly while I was alive. You saved my life. Not by staying with me, but by leaving, by fighting back, by forcing me to confront the monster I had become, the therapy, the consequences, the loss of everything I thought defined me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I learned what really matters: being a good father, being an honest man, being someone my children can respect. I learned that power isn't control, love isn't possession, and strength isn't violence. I learned all of this because you were brave enough to stand up to me. Thank you. I hope I became even a fraction of the person you always were. Tell our children I love them and that I'm sorry for all the years I didn't show it properly. And tell them to be like you, not like I was." Adanna folded the letter and put it away. She didn't know how she felt about it. Moved, perhaps. Sad for the years wasted. Grateful that Emeka had finally understood. But mostly she felt at peace with it all. The story of what happened in that courtroom had become legendary. Young lawyers studied her case in law school. Women's rights organizations used it in their training materials. Journalists wrote articles about her. But for Adanna, it was never about fame or recognition. It was about that moment when she stood up in front of everyone who doubted her and proved that she was strong enough, smart enough, brave enough. It was about looking at the man who had tried to destroy her and showing him that she was indestructible. Most importantly, it was about the woman she had become. Not Emeka's wife, not Emeka's victim. Just Adanna. A woman who had walked through fire and emerged not just alive but transformed, like the phoenix her business was named after. And every time another woman walked into her office, afraid and broken, looking for hope, Adanna would think back to that day in court. The day her husband laughed when he saw her representing herself. The day his smile didn't last long, because that was the day Adanna Okafor stopped being afraid and started being free. And freedom once found can never be taken away again. So I have to ask you viewers, what did you think of Adanna's journey? Have you or someone you know ever had to find this kind of courage? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This story proves that no matter how powerless you feel, you have the strength to change your life. If this story inspired you, moved you, or made you think differently, please do these 3 things for me right now. First, hit that subscribe button. My mom really did say I couldn't reach 1,000 subscribers, and with your help, we're going to prove her so wrong. Second, smash that like button. It helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. And third, share this video. Share it with your friends, your family, your social media. Share it with that person you know who needs to hear that they can overcome anything. Turn on those notifications so you never miss our next powerful story. We have so many more incredible tales of courage, justice, and triumph to share with you. Comment below and let me know. What was your favorite moment in this story? Was it when Adanna first stood up to Emeka? When she brought Rose to testify? When the judge gave his ruling? I want to hear from you.